Hey everybody, John Michael Bailey Injury Lawyers. Again, pleased and proud to be joined by Mr. Mark Lambert, who is our CLO, Chief Legal Officer, and who is a recognized authority and expert in workers' comp. So today we're going to talk about some things that we see very often in the office and let Mr. Lambert share his expertise with everybody because these are common questions that come up all the time. So we're going to get you guys some answers. So, we get questions all the time, for instance, like people who drive for FedEx, people who work for themselves, sometimes as truck drivers, sometimes as contractors, and then some of the people who work for them as subcontractors. So when these people get hurt at work, there's all kinds of different rules and regulations and legal definitions of who is what and how the law applies to them. So let's kind of talk about that.
Well, what we're really talking about can be divided up into sort of three categories, sort of two. The first big category, of course, is the independent contractor. Those are people that truly do just work for themselves. And then you have employees, and employees can work for either their employer or a subcontractor of that employer. Many times those categories get overlapped. Many times they get confused. Many times they get muddled. Sometimes they get muddled intentionally. And when that last part happens, when they are muddled intentionally, is when you really need to reach out to an attorney that can help you figure out the difference because the employer doesn't get to decide if you're an independent contractor or an employee. That's up to the law, not what your boss says. Many times I have people call that have gotten paid through a 1099 form. For some reason, employers think that as long as they do that, then you are a independent contractor and they don't have to provide workers' compensation insurance. That's not what the law says.
Well, so for everybody who may not understand, a 1099 is for somebody who is not an employee, and that's how the employer tells the IRS, I've paid this person this amount of money in compensation, but I did not hold back the taxes that I would have had to have hold back for an employee, and I did not hold back Medicare or anything like that. And that's not my responsibility. That's the employees or the person's responsibility. And they will use that as a shield if an injured person will come back and say, no, really, under the circumstances, I'm an employee. So what you're saying is that shield's as strong as the paper it's printed on. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. Your employer's attempt at tax invasion is not what decides whether or not you're an employee or an independent contractor. That's up to some very specific elements of Tennessee law. And there are things that, as with many other things we've talked about, if you don't ask all the questions about it, seem like it's very simple. If the employer says, well, in this particular job, you're an independent contractor. Therefore, I'm going to pay you as an independent contractor. I'm not going to hold out taxes of an employee. I'm going to give you a particular tax form that says the 1099. And I don't have to provide workers' compensation insurance. That's one of the big ones that they want to try to get away with. That's not up to the employer. We have to ask the questions about whether or not you were at the well, whether or not you were there because the employer wanted you to be there at a particular time, particular place. If the employer had the ability to set your schedule, if the employer had the ability to hire and fire you, all those are questions that Tennessee law uses to decide if you're an employee or an independent contractor.
Now, is this just specific to Tennessee, or are these tests for an independent contractor, are they pretty much standard all across the United States?
In Tennessee, there's a five-prong test to determine if you're an independent contractor or not. In Mississippi, there's a four-prong test. They all look very, very similar throughout the United States. Basically, it can be boiled down to, did you control your own actions? Were you your own boss? Or did you have a real boss? If you had a real boss, then guess what? You're an employee. You're not an independent contractor. But we know how to ask those questions. In most states, thankfully, the state has realized that many employers try to get away with this. They try to misclassify somebody as an independent contractor. And there are special funds There are special programs that people can use that we can get you in touch with, that we can help you use to get the benefits you're entitled to. So even if your employer tells you, I didn't have workers' compensation insurance on you at the time, if I was right or wrong about you being an independent contractor doesn't matter because I didn't have any insurance at the time. You still need to call us. That is not an out for the employer. And in fact, there are many times when we can get you benefits that are above and beyond what the workers' compensation benefits might have been because your employer made the mistake of not providing the insurance the law said they were supposed to have.
But what do you have to do to get that? You have to pick up the phone and you have to call and speak with Mr. Lambert so that he can fight that fight for you, because that insurance adjuster isn't going to even consider you worthy of a return phone call, because he is going to assume that you are an independent contractor. Or even if you are an independent contractor, nobody's going to tell you about this fund and where you need to go to protect yourself. So remember, Mr. Lambert can be found at 888-WE-FIGHT 24/7, 365. If you're hurting, he's working and would love to speak with you. Sorry, that was a word from our sponsors. So now going back to where you were.
Well, it's going to be very easy for an insurance adjuster to listen to the employer and listen to how they have classified and just tell you that they're going to take their word for it. Again, that's not their decision to make. That's the decision of the law in Tennessee. The same thing sort of applies for when we have insurance adjusters try to make determinations as to whether you are an employee of their client or an employee of a subcontractor and who should have covered you through workers' compensation insurance. We have very many occasions when we have two workers' compensation carriers basically doing this and saying that it is not covered by our workers' comp coverage, that's covered by somebody else's workers' compensation coverage. And as we've said over and over again, if you don't ask all the right questions, you don't get to figure out who is the true workers' compensation carrier. And the problem with that is many people are simply left out of the system. If someone says it's not my problem and someone else says it's also not my problem, then pretty soon you're just your own problem and those people are just left to get care on their own.
So, well, let's talk about something that's always made me mad. That's when these corporations will come in and they'll tell the politicians, we're going to provide all these jobs. They're going to be great paying jobs. They're going to be paying 70, 80, 90, $100,000 a year. Give us this deal. Give us a break on taxes for 10 years. It's called a pilot payment in lieu of taxes. But when they get here, they don't do what they say, and they wind up going to a staffing agency and they fill the jobs through a staffing agency. So let's say that you work for a staffing agency and you go to a warehouse and you work in the warehouse all day long. Somebody from either the corporation that runs the warehouse or yet another staffing agency runs over you with a forklift. Who's responsible? I mean, you're hurt. You're at home. Who do I turn to for my workers' compensation claim, and who's responsible for my injuries?
This situation gets incredibly messy. Many times we have employees call us up that are injured and they truly don't even understand who it is that they work for. And once you talk to them, you realize the reason is because it's intentionally muddled. They've got a badge that says they work for one employer. They've got a hat and a vest that says they work for that same employer. They've got company benefits from that same employer. But then whenever they get their pay stub and their tax documents at the end of the year, it's a completely different employer up at the top of it. That is, well, frankly, that goes back to exactly what you were saying. That is the primary employer who will just call the employer using subcontractors for labor, just like they were any other type of resource to get people to come in and do the jobs and to pay them less because they've got a company that's going out and recruiting, a company that's providing supposedly workers' compensation benefits, other types of benefits, and they get paid much less than if they work directly for that employer. Not going to get into the corporate nuances of why that's beneficial for the big employer and bad for the employee. There's a lot of
money. It's all about money.
It is all about money, but it makes a difference from our point of view only when that employee gets injured. And so many times the first things we have to find out are who actually employed you. We've got to tell them to bring in pay stubs, bring in tax documents, and then we have to go out and seek coverage verification from whoever that employer was. Because many times someone gets hurt and they're just pushed to the side and pushed to the side and pushed to the side until the employer hopes and sometimes gets their wish that they have gone and just gotten their own treatment on their own. Maybe they've quit the job and gone to find some other job they can do in that injured condition, and they never actually get to file a workers' compensation claim. It happens over and over again.
And for the employer, that's a win. For the employee, that is a huge loss.
Employers will also want you to think that because you worked for some subcontractor or a subcontractor, which we see a lot in the transportation industry, that you're not entitled to benefits because you got injured while you were on their property. You're not entitled to benefits because you got injured while you were a sub-employee. Managers sometimes just don't know. Managers also sometimes get bonuses for not having injured workers, and they want those bonuses and they want to make sure that they're not looked upon as having an unsafe work environment, not being the unsafe manager, and not being the manager that broke the rules and got someone injured. So they will tell you things that are just frankly not true. And for that reason, we have people that call us up all the time and they've gone for weeks without any kind of medical treatment. They've gone for weeks without any type of compensation, and they've been told that that's legal, that that's the law.
It is absolutely not legal. But again, you're not trained in this. They are, but they're not trained to help you. They're trained to look out for the employer. And if you want somebody looking out for you, you've got to either do it yourself and try to fight that battle on a battlefield that you don't understand and frankly that you're blindfolded trying to fight on. Or you can pick up the phone and you can talk to somebody like Mr. Lambert who knows this stuff backwards and forwards. So what should somebody do if there's any question at all about their benefits, whether they're a contractor, subcontractor, or independent contractor?
The first thing you have to do is what we talked about in the very first video that we made here. Make sure that you have witnesses to your accident. Make sure that you take some pictures of your accident so we can show where you were and who you were working with at the time and the shift that you were on that you got injured. That's very important because believe it or not, sometimes the actual time and the shift that you're working makes a difference as to who employed you at the time. Make sure you've got all that documentation. Your direct manager knows someone who knows how to get you in touch with the insurance adjuster. You have to be the squeaky wheel. You have to tell them that you need to talk to the workers' compensation carrier and you need a claim number and a claims adjuster. Once you get those two things, it makes it a lot easier for us to do our job. Now, we can help you if you just run into a brick wall, but it's important that you at least try to start the process. It's difficult for me to go in front of a workers' compensation judge or a workers' compensation specialist, mediator, and explain to them that we need help because my client forgot to ask. We need help because my client didn't do some of the things that they should have. It's much easier when I can put the blame on the employer and say, we did all the things we were supposed to. What you're supposed to do is make sure that everyone around you knows about that injury, especially your manager or the owner or somebody in charge.
Shift leader, somebody next to you. You've got to report it to somebody up the chain. So you can't go and report it to the janitor. You can't report it to the receptionist. You have to go up the chain.
And that's all the law says that you have to do. You have to make sure that the injury is reported, and then the job becomes the employer's job, whoever that may be, to make sure that you're given a list of doctors you go see and to make sure that you're getting the medical treatment that you're supposed to have. So as long as you've done that, as long as you've reported the injury and made sure that someone, as John says, up the chain knows about it, if you don't get the results you're entitled to or the results that you need to call someone. You need to call someone like us who can help you get the benefits you're entitled to.
So if you're hurting, we're working. Mr. Lambert's there from dawn to dusk. Would love to talk to you. 888-WE-FIGHT. So we're going to close with this for now, but you know we'll be back with more. So from me and Mr. Lambert, if you can hear our voices, we wish you peace and joy, and we hope to talk to everybody real soon. 888-WE-FIGHT.